So in the tradition of the introductions, I'm going to tell you, when I got an invitation to present at this conference, I said, great. They will hear how somebody's talking to them like half of the tourists on this island in English. It's fine, right? And the second conversation we had is, let's talk about dying brands. Let's scare them, I was told. I said, well, let's change it a little bit. Let's just say that brands are dying eventually. So I wanted to talk to you about the old, the new, and the unexpected. Now, in the program to this presentation, this is how I was shown. This is the reality. It's brushed up reality. This is the reality. This is what it looks like after you run to the hotel and it's hot outside, you guys. So let's talk about it. I mean, my mom calls it diet is needed. I say it's evolution of the brand. So let's start with the basics. Let me scare you with a world without brands. What would that be like? Fantastic, isn't it? It's simple. How many of you think it's boring? Raise your hands. Ah, yes. Brands help us. What do? Well, this would be completely impossible. Reading ingredients lists to be buying things. I don't want to live life like this. So they help us differentiate. They help us tell a story about where they came from. Well, let's see if you can pick up on the which brand we're talking about here, and what are the specifics of this brand and this advertising.
To test just how much attention the attention-stealing design of the new Skoda Fabia actually steals, we left one parked on this ordinary road in West London. We wanted to see if its sharp crystalline shapes, bold lines, and lower, wider profile would attract the desired level of attention. Will the 17-inch black alloy wheels stop passers-by in their tracks? Will the angular headlights attract the attention of other road users? Will a crowd gather to check out its fresh, sporty look? Well, not quite. But did the attention-stealing design distract you from noticing that the entire street has been changing right before your very eyes? Don't believe us? Have another look. Did you spot the van changing to a taxi? How about the scooter changing to a pair of bicycles? Or the lady holding a pig? Let alone the fact that the entire street is now completely different. Didn't think so. So there we have it. Proof that the new Skoda Fabia is truly attention-stealing.
We fooled you. You're paying attention to one thing and you're missing the entire point. The competitive background is changing. So we're using brands to even get more attention from the consumers. So we tell them stories. Brands need to be storytellers, right? We're going to tell stories where this product came from and what was involved in making it, clearly. Brands can go a bit further. They can create traditions for consumers. Traditions of coming to dinners with family, friends, warm and fuzzy. But on the other hand, that story also needs to make sense for more than one generation. How do we do this? Well, let's create different versions of things and get consumers to enjoy the same tradition of the previous generation. We potentially use brands to pull on the consumer's emotional strings. How many of you know this brand? Raise your hand. How many of you bought it recently? Raise your hand. What? You don't want to remember childhood? You don't feel emotional? Something is in mismatch, right? So competition is catching up, and it becomes a little bit irrelevant sometimes. So how do we stay relevant? Sure, brands are stories in your brain, and we need to continue telling this story. But it's a little bit more complex than that. Consumers do have choices. Every time they plan a vacation, every time they go to the grocery, every time they choose a laptop, they have to choose among many brands. That's how many stories they have. It's kind of hard to pay attention and choose. So let's take a pick at something simple, computers. Choosing a computer should be a little bit simple nowadays for the students, for the faculty, and because they are relatively similar. But how do we differentiate? Take a look at these two choices. Which one of you you prefer? People who like the computer on the left, raise your hand. People who like the computer on the right, raise your hand. And the rest of you, who needs computers, right? We now have phones. But let's stay with these two. How did Apple become this fantastic choice for many? It was a story of differentiation.
A garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of a contradictory force. The force is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
And the reason is, why don't you be different? Use something unique. Choose something that nobody else will. They invite you to choose a personality. We are cool. Everybody who is cool uses Apple. And these people are PC, they're stodgy, right? You're clearly choosing a computer based on personality. So cool is the way to choose computers. So shouldn't everybody do the same? Apple says think different, and this is how they've positioned themselves for a very long time. And they've been successful. Students have gotten to buy the computer from Apple. Unfortunately, this is what 10 years ago the classroom in a university looked like. How different can a consumer can be choosing Apple if everybody else is using the same? So there is a new differentiation story to be told. And on top of this, competition is catching up. They're saying, why don't we also choose personality as a positioning idea for our product? This is a launch of just click on the screen, please. Yeah. Do you like this ad? Do you have a Surface? What's going on? You don't like the idea? What's not connecting? Yeah. So it really has to be connected to the reality of the consumers. We can use brands to try to convince. It can help us, but the story needs to be linked to the reality. Motorola tried to do a very similar thing. They said, think different. Let's see who they're trying to invite to buy their product. Be original. In fact, the be original positioning is what Motorola used to catch up with Apple. Unfortunately, a little too late. Everybody else is moving on. So the competition, traditional competition with brands, kind of looks something like this. All of the brand managers are sitting down and start thinking, well, who is our target? What are they buying? What are we selling? Computers. What are we going to find to differentiate us? What is our main idea? What is our main benefit? And let's compare ourselves to another competitor, right? And in the end, we're going to say this is the reason why you should buy. This is the focal point. We're all looking for this, the main benefit. And who tells you what the main benefit is? Should be the consumers, right? And the competition. How many of you are listening to what the consumers are telling to you in the satisfaction forms? You're reading them, right? Perhaps not. Well, the problem with this approach is that you're essentially going where the entire category is going. You're looking at what the consumers are telling you, you're looking over your left shoulder what competition is doing, and at all times, you're focusing on differentiation. But here's the thing. How many of you go to the same restaurant every Thursday, every Friday, have like a tradition? Raise your hand. How many of you go there more than 20 times, 30 times? At what point of time do you give up? You want tradition, but you want some novelty. You start creating tradition, but then you are tired of it. So finding this balance between novelty and tradition. Consumers want to have something comforting, but at the same time, they want to see new items on the menu. Dancing clubs or nightclubs, on average, in the United States, live for 18 months. We need to close them down and start something fresh, because this is where consumers are too tired and too uninterested in the same image and the same idea. So finding this balance is a little bit tricky. So here's what the competition usually looks like. Say you're competing in nightclubs or you're competing in hotels, and consumers see you against your competitor, and some of the things you share, some of the things you are differentiated on. The things that you are differentiated on is what you normally focus. The things that are common between the two or three is what the entire category is expecting of you. This is the necessary points to have in order for you to be a legitimate player. And this is what the competition is going to be focusing on. The right side, the attributes of brand one, and the left side of the attributes of the brand one, brand one, brand two. This is what we want to be differentiated on. But unfortunately, we compete with each other, so we start stealing the same things. And eventually, those things become common for everyone, because consumers help remind us. We started with what? Let's have cable television in the rooms, right? Now everybody has Wi-Fi, and if you don't, there's a problem. And so on and so forth. At what point of time do we stop developing these dimensions, adding these on and on? So some of the competitors don't catch up. And for various reasons, they're just not able to stay up with the pace. For example, environment kind of killed codec. Technology was progressing too fast. Pan Am had issues with safety. Motorola and Nokia were connecting people and the original, and yet they disappeared too. So the pace of the competition pushing differentiation on branding even faster, and some of them don't survive. Well, here's the issue. If we are expecting, as a consumer, to have a roof over our heads, over a bed to sleep on, and then after we we wrapped it in a nice hotel, we start expecting other things, like AC, cable television, and Wi-Fi. This is the expected product. How can we augment our product as a hotel? We can think of other things to delight them. We're going to put something on their pillow. Oh, wait, competition is doing that already. We're going to invite them for a special event. if they're a very good consumer, if they're a very good guest. We're going to have some other ideas, and we're going to be offering them in this augmented product. Surprise them. Give them something unexpected. Here's the issue. Competition, if it's sufficiently attractive, is going to catch up too. And that attribute will become expected over a period of time. What will be next? We don't want to be here. This is what we learned from the brands that evolve. We want to try to find a place where we're going to constantly surprise consumers and at the same time disrupt the competition a little bit. The wisdom comes from one of the most traditional categories, furniture. IKEA did that in the United States. What do consumers expect from IKEA in Europe? We've been there. Beautiful rooms. It's almost like you're invading somebody's space. A little bit like voyeurism, isn't it? But how did it come to the United States? This is the choice Americans had. In the 80s, there were two essentially broad choices. Walmart, the type where you have, well, virtually nothing. This is the type of furniture you have. Flat boxes, unimaginative, no design. You put it together if the screws are not missing. And the type of people who are going to IKEA are a little bit, to Walmart are a little bit suspect as well. Okay, this is the lower side of the scale, where the lower quality. You cannot expect anything here. No service, no support. Definitely, if you couldn't put together the table, just return it. Over time, competition obviously developed another spectrum up, which is high quality. Let me give you an example. Ethan Allen is a good representative. Beautiful furniture. The category moved towards choices for consumers. So they have to have hangers of different styles, of different design. And of course, many salespeople whose job it is to push you up, to give you the higher quality, to convince you that it's important for you to invest in the quality. And they even propose to you that it's a very complex issue, that most of the Americans are choosing sofa in the wrong way, and you should pay attention to a lot of things, some of them. How did we get here? It's just a sofa. Well, that's normal. In the competition, in the frame of furniture, both competitors and consumers are essentially created this spectrum, where if it's high quality, if it's high service, if it's high attention, you're going to pay for it, but you will get something that will last you a lifetime. And on the other hand, lower means nothing, right? And so most of the Americans bought furniture for a lifetime because you don't spend enough, you don't get good quality, you spend enough, you have good quality. And once you have good quality and you spend $4,000 on the sofa, you're going to keep it for a long time. They expected lots of things. Advice. They expected delivery. They expected assembly. They expected to have a credit and removal of the old furniture. And here comes someone that sounds like Walmart with their cost-cutting philosophy, but is not like Walmart. Who is that? IKEA. With their mazes to look for furniture. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to disrupt the usual flow of the consumer's choice? You betcha. They give them time to eat. Why? This is not normal. We're not shopping for food, we're shopping for furniture. They give you time to sit around because the shopping experience is tiring, right? And they give you furniture that you still have to collect and construct. Why would you do that? The whole thing doesn't make sense, except for, in a strange way, it does. Because with the surprises like a restaurant, with the unexpected, beautiful things that you can choose, because most of us don't know how to design things or how to put a room together. It's not like Walmart, and at the same time, it can somehow have the prices of Walmart. So what they've done is this unexpected positioning. They said, let's look at the category. Where is the category going? What are they adding on? What does the 5-star experience look like in a furniture store? And what is a 1-star experience looking like? Let's look at the things that absolutely must be there, furniture, and we're going to add some unexpected things. So we're going to break this idea from the beginning, and we're going to create our own product. And this product will appeal to people because it will make sense. The unexpected, the expected things that they removed is no varieties, 3 or 4 main styles, no sales consultants, absolutely no need to in the IKEA, and definitely they will not have the removal of the furniture. And what they're adding vibrant environments. They're adding beautiful products with a design built in. They have babysitting service so that you can shop at peace, and a restaurant. None of these things you would expect in a furniture store in that frame. And the whole thing is bound together by the idea of democratic design, low price with meaning. And this is how it all came together. They essentially took the most important things from the category, they built in that unexpected things, and created something new that disrupted the positioning, that disrupted the existing group of the furniture manufacturers and sellers. So over time, they've decided that they're going to look at the general movement of the category and chip off some of the consumers who are not happy or for whom that doesn't make sense. And the way to do it in any industry is to observe what are the category characteristics that are both functional and imagery that are essentially going against the consumer satisfaction. What are the things that we do that consumers find strange? I'll give you an example. In hotels, I know it's an operational question, but from the consumer perspective, it's a little bit frustrating. We give them the shampoos, but we ask them to pay for phone calls. We let them check in, or ask them to check in before 3, right? Or, pardon, after 3, but check out at what time? 11, 1? Why? Why do we kick them out of bed? We know why. We need to put the room back in order. But consumers find it frustrating. There are lots of things that our consumers over time find strange. Like 1 in 100 numbers are expected to have 24 hours access, but the banks are not open 24 hours. So these category expectations potentially are points for disruption, points for finding a place for a brand or an unusual, unexpected positioned option. IKEA did this, and they basically said to the consumers, expect the unexpected.
Many of you feel bad for this lamp. That is because you're crazy. It has no feelings, and the new one is much better.
This was a challenge. Now, I'm not saying for you to disrupt the entire category in which you're operating. But we can learn something from the big disruptors and disrupt it in a smaller way. Recognize that there are certain things consumers want to have always. This is the comfort of coming back to the place where you spend your wonderful holidays with the people you love. But on the other hand, they want something new, always. So how can we find this balance? Well, what if we create the message of always surprising them with something? Every time you come to us, every time you're experiencing us, we will surprise you. We will touch your life in a different way, and every time it will be different. And over time, this story is more compelling. So instead of dying, instead of evolving, we can build a positioning on surprise. Now,
Dear Jet,
oops. This is what was done also
Dear JetBlue,
by
the first time I flew
JetBlue.
you guys, I was getting on. I was like, oh, look at me, I'm in row 2, I must be first class. I actually said it out loud. Look at me, I'm in first class. The flight attendant was like, oh, honey, everybody's first class here. And I just thought, oh, I like them. They're all cheerful and nice and funny. And I think every experience I've had has been, pleasant in that kind of way. Sincerely, Vivian Bertman, Seattle, Washington.
Surprising consumers, giving them something unexpected, feeling them like they're in the first class, is what JetBlue did following IKEA's recipe. Removing the expected things and giving them the unexpected. What is expected? Seating. What is expected? Always to have food, snacks, and a very special way of boarding the plane. They removed some of these and they gave them something that is definitely unexpected. Entertainment, bigger seats, and so on. And what it also involves is to make sure that the people who you're working with, the employees, are also on board. And they're excited.
Attention passengers, this is your captain speaking. We're making our final descent and we'll be touching down in about 20 minutes. So on behalf of the entire flight crew, I'd like to thank... Hey, look out the window, we're on TV! Hey, over here! Over here! Hello, America!
Fly JetBlue Airways to New York City from $49 one way. Call 1-800-JetBlue.
Of course, we have to make a big bang when we launch a positioning like this. So where do we draw inspiration? We have plenty of things that are changing, lots of things that are disrupting. Who needs to ask the consumers to pay for their phone calls? They have mobile phones now, right? We solved that issue with technology. Of course, consumers have much more power, they have much more places for conversation, and different types of interactions. So, new markets. Some of them you don't like. I know. New marketplaces for new ideas to grow, new partners to use, new channels to communicate to different consumers that we didn't reach before, and tell them the story of surprise, give them the unexpected. And I will tell you that the brands that survive evolution and evolve to something, not only do they surprise, they are constantly making innovation as the core of their DNA. And Apple, remember they said, let's do the thing different. But they're still around, even though consumers now, all of them have that, most of them have that computer on their lap. They evolve visually, but that's not what evolution from branding perspective is. It's to actually have a long-term vision, and that vision needs to be clear for all. Let me give you a little bit of glimpse of how they talk about their vision. this is a company that is proud that they keep consumers in their mind. They're passionate about consumers, clearly. But what's more is they see where that brand is going to be in the future. And no matter what story they tell to the consumers, they keep them in mind. They keep them at their heart, and they always give them something unexpected. Sometimes we expect them to give us some features, and then they surprise us even again. So let's establish this as a final point. Brands are making consumers promises. And that promise has to be about something. That promise has to give consumers a story and then deliver on that story. It needs to be relevant to them emotionally. It needs to be relevant to them functionally. It definitely needs to be unique. And so when we put together the competition, when we put together the consumers, and what's most important, the surprise that we need to work on and always deliver to the consumers, that's when this promise comes to life. And this is when that brand becomes more resilient to change, more resilient to, well, effects of time, strong competitive forces, and consumer tiredness, consumer fatigue. So we always want to give them something that is familiar, but always grow on that familiarity and get them to be surprised. And as we've seen in the last 10 years, the surprise is something they want to talk about. The surprising things is what keeps them in the in connection with the brand. It will be focused on what they want, but it will be pulling on the emotional strings. Dove is, I'm beautiful because I'm happy with who I am inside and out. The Harley-Davidson's promises, big, bad, powerful machines for men who refuse to be caged. These are traditional brands, but if we give it a little bit more surprise, consumers will talk about it. They will be engaged with them. Let me give you one that didn't keep promise. Let's hope that they will come back at some point of time.
We are just moments away from releasing Snuffy, the rescued seal, back into the ocean. And now you see it, Snuffy's triumphant return.
Holy
just shipped my 90.
I just shipped my bed.
Don't you know it feels good to be alive? You could be larger than life, bigger than the world.
0.1 cubic feet of storage, 12-volt light bulb, all in beautiful injection molded thermoplastic.
Shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted. Shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Times are changing everywhere. Do we dream and do we dare? It's up to you. The door is open wide. Feel the rhythm of today. Learn the part and join the play. The world is here. Let's take it for a ride. You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. Hopes and dreams, every boy. You can fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. You know you could.
You would not believe the motherload I just dropped.
So I challenge you to keep in mind that brands are about making a promise to the consumers. But in order for you to have a long-term life in any category, you need to constantly surprise them. You need to give them something unexpected. So search for that unexpected. Thank you.